Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after a victory for the Winnipeg Jets over the Arizona Coyotes that snaps a three-game losing streak for them and gets desperate 2 points they needed extremely badly. I take a look already at some of the comments here as Savage 9100 says, yeah, we got points, but it was like watching pond hockey. I need coffee to keep watching. Lynn Reimer says, I'm finding it quite rehabilitating to sleep through the games and just wake up for the K&R shows. Highly recommends it. I think I'm seeing what, I take a look at the early comments here. I think I saw what a lot of you are seeing or saw in that game. This is the Jets going toe-to-toe with the very last place team in the entire NHL, and it looked like it was a fairly even battle. I will say this, this is the first game in, I believe, some time that the Winnipeg Jets were the better of the two teams on the ice. People like to use terms like, deserved a better fate in other games. And, I think that up until this point, as of late, the fate that the Winnipeg Jets have had, they've deserved the losses that have been piling up for them lately. I do believe they were the better team tonight. They won. They were the better of the two teams. Third period push gets them through on this evening. So, celebrate that. Celebrate the little things at this stage. Celebrate the 2 points. That's good. All that said, if the Winnipeg Jets are going to be a playoff team, they're a team that's going to have to turn things around staggeringly. And with about 30 games left in the season, kind of calculated, they're going to need to win, more than a little more than 7 out of 10 games for the next, the next 3 10-game blocks in order for them to make the playoffs at this stage. And I'm trying to figure out if that's a good way to explain this. I think this is a better one. Basically, if you've got 30 games left and you have to win 21 games to put you in the playoffs, maybe this is a better way to say it. The Jets only have room for 9 more losses this season. I think that's a pretty interesting way to put this, because if we go out and you're coming up in this upcoming week, put that number on a chalkboard somewhere, and every time the Winnipeg Jets lose, take that number from 9 down to 8, down to 7. If that number gets down to 0, the chances are your Winnipeg Jets are not making it to the playoffs. I know there's a lot of people who assume that ship has already sailed, and maybe they're right to do so. Just that to me is kind of a good way to establish the pace they need to play at. And in order to play at a pace where you're winning 7 out of 10 games, you got to be fairly dominant to do that. I don't think we saw that tonight in this game, but no one should be complaining about 2 points. That's the way it goes, Lynn. It's not a hydration issue. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. Kelly Moore, I know, noticed it on the pregame show for CJOB. It's just funny. I ran into a stretch where I've got to do 1, 2, 3 straight CJOB pregames, and I've been sick as a dog for them. Now, no one has to worry about COVID. I've tested. I don't have COVID. It's going to be a little gravelly for the show here, but you'll be hearing the dulcet tones of Ken Weeb very soon. And I do believe that Jeff Hamilton is going to join us for the show, which is perfect. He's been down on the road trip, as Ken is down there right now. Jeff also, if you've been paying attention to the news, had a conversation with Blake Wheeler that made a little bit of news. We'd love to talk about that, but I promised him, and I like to deliver on my promises. So let's bring the big man in here. Here comes Ken Weeb, the man with the best entry music in the biz. Kenny, before you get rolling here, I just wanted to show off my mug. I know that you've got one. Here's my Kenny and Renny, this gorgeous Kenny and Renny coffee mug. I don't have any coffee in there. I'm not going to tell you what I have in there, but hopefully it'll help with my voice. But I just wanted to point this out to the chat room, who love to, weigh in on the show and maybe hold you and I Ken accountable at times in the show. I just want to say this.
Receipts.
Yeah, exactly. So there's going to be points at which people say things in the chat room that are just a little wacky, a little bit out there. So I want you to pay attention to this, because I've got my water and I've got my cup. If Ken is talking and your comment is on the screen and I hold this up, you may want to rethink your life choices. You may want to take that comment and wonder if what you said is worth a wake up, because that's why I'll be holding this. Ken, how are you doing, my friend? You're looking great. Look like you got some sun.
It's more of the lighting, but definitely is nice to go on the morning walks for sure. I've been making sure to lather up in the 30 to 50 sunblock here, and yes, I did get out on the golf course, for those asking. No aces to report, but 19 pars in 2 rounds, so it's been a good stretch here.
Nice.
Good to be inside the rink. This is only my 3rd road game since August of 2020. So we're happy to be in the barn. First and foremost, next time I ask you to sub in for me, and you tell me when you don't have a voice, Sean, I will find another option. But tough. Okay. It's tough to have a better option than you. That's for sure. But sorry to hear you're not feeling great.
That's okay.
Jeff is pounding away here, so we'll see if he'll join us or not. He's got his story to be filed before mine needs to be filed. So, early, quick to the buffet. I think you captured most of it already. Jets, I would say, outside of the, here's the thing. Fairly good start, followed by some lackluster play, and then I would say a pretty good third period, but again, there will be no celebrate. There's reason to celebrate for the Jets because they just lost 4 in a row.
Yeah.
But they're not going home thinking, man, if we play the way we did against the Coyotes, we're really going to get ourselves back in the race. But as you've been saying for weeks, Sean, Jets need to collect points. Doesn't matter, it does matter how they play. But again, you play the game in front of you. It was a little bit more wide open in terms of style that we would have expected. I think the Jets, gave up 17 high danger chances against a Coyotes team that is last in the NHL. I would say that's probably not ideal or optimal. On the flip side, the Jets, what have we been talking about for the last 2 weeks? The Jets are too top heavy. They got goals from 3 lines. They got 2 assists from a guy most people don't want in the lineup, and their backup goalie stood tall when he needed to. So I wouldn't say it's all doom and gloom in Jets land, but again, they didn't play great today, but they found a way to get it done, is what I would say. That's, again, you celebrate for 5 minutes, then you move on, because if they play this way against Montreal, it's going to be even more challenging than it was this afternoon.
Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing, is I was looking at this stretch of hockey and I was thinking, February, the Jets schedule was a bit of a murderer's row. And so I had thought, geez, at the time of the season where they really need to turn things around, they've got a really tough schedule in which to do it. They started off so well after the break, things kind of plummeted back to earth for them, unfortunately. But I was starting to look at this stretch as maybe a time that they could pick up a little bit of speed, right? Start maybe trying to move things around. And I don't necessarily think, to your point, like, this is not necessarily a game that you think, okay, this is a team that's, come shooting out of the gates here. And then all of a sudden you run into Montreal, who you were expecting to play this lost team not that long ago. And all of a sudden looks like it has found its identity under its new head coach, in Marty St. Louis. I wanted to start right in that spot when, sorry, do your thing.
No, it's okay. I'm one quick thing. So this was the game they had to have on the trip. I mean, 1-3 was not, 1-2-1 is not what they would consider a successful trip, but it was a game they had to have based on the 4 they have upcoming. As you mentioned, Montreal playing better, but can they sustain it? Right? They got the initial bump. Now they're going to have to see if they can sustain it. Friday basically must. I hate the term, but if you want to catch Dallas, they're 6 points ahead of you. They have to win the game on Friday. Because guess what? If they get through the first two games of the homestand, they have Igor Shesterkin coming into town Sunday, playing out of his mind, and then they have the Tampa Bay Lightning coming into town. So, sorry to interrupt the mojo there.
No problem. It's a grind. It's like what I was looking at is maybe a little bit of a spot to pick up some confidence. I don't know how much confidence the Jets get from a game like this tonight, right? In a game in which, Nate Beaulieu is sitting there on the bench in the second intermission and saying, this is like the most important, this is the most important period of our entire season, you got something to say.
No, this is actually what Sean and I are saying right now. I think he's arguing that we're not saying this. Of course, it was critical that the Jets won. We're not saying that. What we are saying is that I don't think we should be fooled into thinking if the Jets only play like they did today, that they can go on this crazy run that will allow them to get above. This was an important first step for them. It doesn't matter what it looked like. It doesn't have to be a Picasso. They've had a good third period, and that's sometimes you find a way to win when you're not at their best. That's what good teams do, but the Jets need more than just a Sunday afternoon win against the Coyotes to put themselves back in good team territory.
Yeah, and you know what? It's interesting, and this is going to sound like a little bit of weird philosophy. I think it is, but I think you heard me talking on the top of the show. Everything that we've been talking about has been wins, the amount of wins that they have to rack up. But, saying that they have to win 7, basically, if the Jets in their next 10-game stretch win 7 games, and the next 10 they win 7, they would need to win 8 out of 10 games in their last 10-game stretch, and that would get them over the playoff line. That's kind of the numbers that we're talking about here. But it can be difficult to, not difficult, but that sounds like a little convoluted. To me, at this stage, Ken, it's all about losses. So people are right here and saying, they won. To me, it's important because they avoided a loss. Because my scorecard, the way I've got it set up here, and I think you heard at the beginning of the show, 9 losses is all they can allow for. There's 8 weeks left in the season. So basically, your capacity for losing if you're the Winnipeg Jets is 1 loss a week. That's what we have going forward here. 1 loss every week is all the Winnipeg Jets can allow going forward if they hope to make the playoffs. The margin of error is unbelievably slim. That's where we're at. I think that's the point that we're trying to make here. Wanted to get into something with the conversations that were coming out of the team from the team yesterday, because identity came up again, right? And not having an identity, and we had Pierre-Luc Dubois talking about it. We had Adam Lowry talking about it. And the funny part about this for me is I still go back to Mark Scheifele being the first person to say this. And I know that any conversation that you have with Mark Scheifele now, and I know everyone in the chat room, anyone who watches the Winnipeg Jets, when I bring up his name, the one thing that everyone is saying in their heads right now is effort. Like if you don't see enough effort from this player, I don't think anything that he says matters. You need to see the effort from him to get back into this. But at this stage, Ken, this late in the season, to have your leaders, whether you want to throw Mark Scheifele into that from what he did before, but Paul Stastny kind of addressed that a little later on. Now Pierre-Luc Dubois and Adam Lowry openly talking about this team and needing to find an identity. What does it say about this team to be having a crisis of identity as the clock rolls into March here in the last 2 months of the season?
Yeah, I don't care what they say about it. I want to see how they play, to be honest. I would understand there's some frustration being shared, and that's good. They should be frustrated because I talked about it with Jeff Merrick on Friday. The Jets are not a defensive juggernaut, and they're not a team that can score a lot. So you don't defend well, and you're not scoring enough. So what are you then? And you're not a big, rugged team that runs teams out of the rink. So you're good or mediocre at a bunch of things. That's generally the teams that find themselves in the middle or, the bottom third, which is, where the Jets are trying to claw their way up from. So, we'll get to Dubois in a moment. Once again, Pierre-Luc Dubois, the best player on the ice for either team. Is it a problem, Sean? Of course. The Jets don't know what they are at times, and that is a problem because they're trying to figure it out on the fly, and they're not They don't have time to practice. They're playing every other day. So they're going to have to figure it out by doing. It's not what you say, it's what you do. I think the Jets were good at times today, but I mean, they played a run and gun team today. So it's not a surprise they kind of got into a run and gun chance game, given that the Coyotes are playing for the first overall draft pick. So that's a problem when you're playing defensively sound teams, and it's a problem when you're playing opportunistic teams. So, yeah, I don't know, Sean. I mean, and we've talked about this a lot, and it is a problem, but the Jets are they're going to decide what kind of team they are by how they play in this next stretch, not by what they do to sort of decipher and drill into what they want. I mean, Dave Lowry said it again. In the games the Jets have had success or played well against great teams, their identity is very clear. It just, they don't play to their identity enough. So that's my bigger issue with the Jets. It's not that they can't determine what they are. It's that they don't play to that identity enough, and you don't really know. There's too much Jekyll and Hyde with this team. Some nights you get a really good showing, other nights you get a non-engagement type of showing. So that's my bigger issue with the thing, and I want to hear what you think.
Well, I was talking about this with Kelly on the pregame show. I do think that there's been numerous instances this season where the Jets have shown who they are and how
can be
the best version of themselves, right? We've seen that before. It's to your point that you just made, and I'll frame it like this: you can have a blueprint and you can know exactly who you are, but if you aren't putting in the effort to execute the game plan, none of that matters anymore. And that is the baffling thing about this, is the ability for this team to kind of get a consistent effort, not a consistent game, a consistent effort. Because if you don't have a consistent effort, you can't play a consistent game. But it's not like we see the Jets on one night go out and play, perfectly to their identity and everybody's engaged. And then we see them go out the next game and their issue is that they're all over the place, but they're trying really hard. That's never been the problem. The problem is they come out and then we're not seeing the effort that is needed from the group. And that's the most baffling thing here, has been, the idea that this team cannot seem to muster up enough energy, or not enough players on the roster can muster up enough energy night in and night out to get this done. We know that NHL hockey teams have bad nights, and out of that comes the premise that any team can win on any night, because the Colorado Avalanche can be playing the Montreal Canadiens, and the Colorado Avalanche could have a bad game, and the Montreal Canadiens could play out of their mind and win. But on a night where both teams are going, the Colorado Avalanche are going to win that game. That's just how it goes, barring crazy bad bounces. But that's the issue with the Jets. And this is where I will say, from the comments that I said the other day about Pierre-Luc Dubois, and this is my bridge into us talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois, I still think, and I think from what we saw last game, where the Jets had a chance, and then what you saw from tonight, Pierre-Luc Dubois getting on the scoreboard at this stage is integral to the Winnipeg Jets winning. To his credit, the last couple of games, he's been going out and doing that. But what hasn't been missing, to the point that you made when I made that point, Ken, is his effort has been there since the beginning and has been there pretty much every game they needed from him. I wonder, Ken, in this situation, are we seeing, and tonight it really, really made me think this, have we seen the likes of Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor assume the leadership of this Winnipeg Jets hockey team? And I would throw Adam Lowry in there, because down the stretch here, he's been disruptive on the penalty kill. He got a goal here tonight. You don't see a lot of nights where Adam Lowry is taking a night off. I wonder if, in the absence of, and this is what the chat room seems to think, this is what a lot of people talk about, that you're not getting the effort that you need from Mark Scheifele, and that you were talking about that a previous game where one line was going and the Jets' top line wasn't going. Has Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor, in everything but name and the letter on the jersey, assumed the leadership of this Winnipeg Jets hockey team?
Well, they're certainly asserting themselves, Sean, and becoming part of the leadership group. I think they already were. We're going to get into this a little bit further, but let's also we can't discount that Blake Wheeler scored the game-tying goal today in a game where the Jets were down in the third period. So, maybe you don't get the game winner without getting the game tire, right? So I didn't think that their line had a great game.
They didn't have a great game, and that goal, Ken, is a egregious mistake by the Coyotes, who have the Jets outmanned and Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler behind them, and then they overpass the puck, creating an odd man situation. That wasn't an earned. That was an unforced turnover that creates an opportunity. Granted, he scores on the opportunity, right? I don't. Sorry, I don't want to go down a road where I sound like I'm taking something away. But I guess what I'm saying is, yeah, you can say that. You can say, you don't get the game winner without the game tire from Blake Wheeler on this one. But to me, from the top of the game to the bottom of the game tonight, that Pierre-Luc Dubois line was pushing. And if anyone was leading, or the rest of the team was following anyone, it was that trio of Evgeny Svechnikov, Kyle Connor, and Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Best line on the ice. There's no doubt about that, and they were leading for sure. I'm just pointing out that the captain of the team also scored the tying goal in a game that they were down. That is basically all that I'm saying. Is it going to be their team? Can it be their team? All of those things are true. Is it their team right now? Again, this is something where I'm not as comfortable weighing in because we're not in the room. I mean, the power dynamics are something that you don't have a good feel of. Based on the ice play, the Dubois line has been the best line on a lot of nights for the Winnipeg Jets. So that hasn't changed. But I mean, there were also stretches where Scheifele and Wheeler coming out of the break they had 12, 13 points apiece. So they're doing their part on some nights. We talked about body. Let's one quick thing. Last year when Wheeler was hurt, we talked about body language a lot, Sean, right? We saw him huffing and puffing going to the bench. You could see that, you couldn't identify necessarily that it was his ribs, but you saw that there was something bothering him. Today I saw a bunch of, not from Wheeler as much, but Scheifele, like tons of shifts on even something as simple as a line change, Sean. The effort exuded on the way to the bench for a line change just sets a bad precedent when your top line center is coasting to the bench. I mean, never mind defensive plays, but today I saw a lot of that during the game. I didn't see super high engagement yet, got himself a breakaway, got himself a penalty shot, got himself a few chances, but it doesn't have to be one or the other. But they need more from both of those parties in terms of the lines. And tonight, there's no doubt that the Dubois pulled his, and this is what I was trying to get by to you, Sean, and you mocked me when I was talking about effort. Even in the games the Jets were losing, Dubois is trying to pull other guys into the fight. And that's exactly what he did again tonight. So to me, my biggest thing was, I don't care if he gets 2 assists or 0 assists. If he's playing like that all the time, he's exuding the type of leadership that you're asking for right now.
Yeah, I just think this. I think tonight that from punching people in the mouth, slashing people, I think there was a really good example of what you and I have talked about in the past about Pierre-Luc Dubois seeming to not only get away with a lot of stuff, but get the calls from the refs. That play where he gets
Chikrin was getting. But Chikrin was getting the original minor, so in that situation, it's the opposite of what you said. He got the retaliation penalty, I think, didn't he?
No.
The goalie, the ref's arm went up when the Jets had the puck, and then he evened it up after.
Dubois behind the net, loses the puck, slashes the player, goes to the front of the net, breaks his stick over. Breaks his stick with the cross check
over Chikrin.
Chikrin turns around, punches him in the face, and Dubois sells it phenomenally, just absolute. You would have thought that it was Buster Douglas who caught him with that, because he goes back and then they get into a little bit of a struggle. But if he was getting, if it's true that the ref was giving Chikrin the original penalty, then I don't know what he would have given Pierre-Luc Dubois the penalty for, because he really didn't do anything in the scrum afterwards. But the evidence was right there. He broke his stick over top of Jacob Chikrin with the cross check and dropped it. But I just thought it was like, boy, oh boy, if I'm going to get a penalty and I get to slash a guy and then break my stick over a guy and then take a shot back and take a guy and even it up with me, I'll take that every single time. And Pierre-Luc Dubois will, because he loves getting in guys' grills. He sat there and he chirped with Chikrin for a long time after that. You cannot help but be involved in a game when that kind of stuff is happening. And I just think, I think we need to examine a little bit more often what that kind of attitude that he displays does to a guy like Kyle Connor when he's on the ice, right? Like Kyle Connor isn't going to go into a scrum and grab a guy and drop the gloves or do whatever. But you have to get in there. You have to. And Kyle Connor does. When everyone goes to the front of the net, Kyle Connor's got to get in there along with everyone else because you got to support your teammate. And that drags guys into a game. I truly and totally believe. And I think that we saw, especially on that game-winning goal, which, by the way, I give the biggest piece of that is the pass by Evgeny Svechnikov. Is just absolutely phenomenal. Good on him. We'll get to talking about him. But I saw him being engaged tonight. I saw Kyle Connor being engaged tonight. And I just feel like Pierre-Luc Dubois' energy was infectious in that way. And listen, Kyle Connor's 32 goals, potentially on his way to a 50-goal season. If he gets there, the examination of what Pierre-Luc Dubois means to Kyle Connor's energy in a game is something we need to dig in and put time into.
And great zone entry by Dubois on that play as well. I do agree with you. It was a great job by Svechnikov to drag the defender over. The other part too, Sean, Kyle Connor, it would have been easy for a guy who's not a natural goal scorer who's chasing 50 to end up below the goal line. His ability the spacing element of that play, knowing where the puck was coming, and he was kind of drifting, but he didn't drift too far. He kept a really good angle for himself and delivered on that play as well. Yeah. I don't want to lose track of this, and let's go back to Svechnikov in a minute, but I wasn't even thinking this, Sean. Robert Sutton has a great question. I mean, I don't think either one of us was thinking about this, but this is the first meeting between the two teams since the Scheifele hit. What's going to happen on Tuesday night?
I think that is just absolutely buried and forgotten, to be honest.
Really?
Who are the Montreal Canadiens right now? Like, what is this team? Is that team even that same team? I mean, I don't know. I to be honest with you, I think it's entirely buried. The Montreal Canadiens have different things they need to figure out. They've got a different head coach. They've got a different general manager. The culture,
okay.
Carey Price isn't in the game. Like, all of the kind of leaders of that team seem to be gone. Shea Weber isn't around anymore. Tyler Toffoli is gone. All the guys who would kind of be like the preeminent ranking guys who would kind of carry that. Now, if Jake Evans...
What does Jake Evans think, though? That's what I mean.
Jake Evans, I don't think, is a player who ever wants to revisit that again. From the comments, I covered that team.
Yeah, you did. I know.
When he came back, he did not want to talk about it. He had nothing that he wanted to say, and he prefaced it kind of by making it sound like he didn't want to talk about it during the playoffs. And then as soon as the playoffs were up, I was working still on the Canadiens when they had their postseason avails, and he didn't want to talk about it then either. I don't think he's got any interest in talking about that. And to be quite honest, Ken, that happened in Game 2 of that series. Right?
Game 1.
Game 1. So there was plenty of time over the rest of that series for things to get heated and out of control. I know that there's bigger things at play when the playoffs are happening. Corey Perry, there's another guy who was on that Canadiens team. What's his name? Just the Stahl, Eric Stahl. Like, all the really main players for that Montreal Canadiens team are gone. So the guys who are left behind, like, is Nick Suzuki going to do something about this? Is Cole Caulfield going to do something about this? I just don't see it happening. I don't see the players who would have been interested in making a war out of this and sending a message aren't there to send the message. And the Montreal Canadiens have bigger problems than this. The Winnipeg Jets ultimately, lost that series. They've got bigger things to worry about. If there's any retribution they want, it's that the Montreal Canadiens absolutely dominated and destroyed them and sent them out of the playoffs in the second line. So to me, as far as storylines go, that's extremely buried. Unless Jake Evans decides he wants to go out and drop the gloves and get some one-on-one retribution. Jake Evans doesn't strike me as that player. He's not much of a fighter. Mark Scheifele isn't either. Even if those two did fight, to me it seems like it would be a little bit of a dust-up where they tug on each other's jerseys and wrestle each other down. I don't see the actors on either team to take this and create a massive situation out of this. I think it's dead and in the past. for everyone other than the people who seem to believe that hit is the moment at which Mark Scheifele went awry, and the issues that people have seen from him this year stem from that, which is a theory that I've never bought into.
Okay, cool. And again, I wasn't even thinking about it, so I just it caught my attention. And again, we'll go back to that line in a second, but I know a lot of people asking about Ehlers. We don't know what Nikolai Ehlers' time frame is. The last update before the Jets went on the road was that Ehlers was skating every other day. So to me, if you're dealing with a knee injury and you're only skating every other day, Sean, I mean, I'm not a doctor, but don't you think that suggests that there's still some swelling that he's dealing with? And again, it's possible that Ehlers has been skating daily when the team's been gone for this week, but we won't know that until the Jets are back home. So for those asking, I'm not expecting Ehlers to play this week. At earliest, it would be Friday. He hasn't had a single practice with the Jets in a non-contact jersey. So I understand it's an urgent time of the year, but I don't think the cavalry is coming in for Tuesday night, and I'd be surprised if it's there for Friday, unless Nikolai Ehlers has healed incredibly well during the last week's time. But I think it's fair to expect him to be close to sometime in the early part of March, but we don't have a good timetable for you. And the Jets have always been very close to the vest when it comes to revealing the injury timelines. So I guess the short answer of the long-winded way of saying it is I don't think we'll find out anything until either tomorrow or Tuesday in terms of, but again, until you see Nikolai Ehlers in a practice with a regular jersey on, I don't think he's around the corner of returning. However, I do think Andrew Kopp could play. Dave Lowry said he couldn't really say much except that he's improving. I will expect Andrew Kopp to play on Tuesday night, unless there is some kind of setback. But I think the Jets will be getting Kopp back, but I don't expect him to get Perfetti or Ehlers back before Friday at the absolute earliest.
Right. I wanted to bring up this comment here just quickly because I don't know if you saw it, Ken. I texted about the Hoosley choir, Ukrainian men's choir, that they should play the games, and just a way to kind of show support for the people of the Ukraine. I'm just going to do this because there's a funny story behind it. Wrench Doozer says, any chance we see that choir on Tuesday? I didn't tweet that out of any insider knowledge. The funny part about that is my wife worked with the wife of a member of that choir, and she got a text from her friend saying, does Sean know something that we don't know? Like, should my husband be ready for the choir to sing the anthems on Tuesday? So clearly, if the Hoosley men have not been involved or have not been given a heads up about anything, I wouldn't expect that. To me, it was just one of those things that I think you throw out there that's interesting. And I do like the idea of people belting at the top of their lungs. This is an interesting one, Ken, because you've covered a lot of games at the United Center, and there's the debate. You should be standing up at attention and quiet for the anthems, whereas in Chicago, they do the opposite where they belt out at the top of their lungs. And it is really like, that is one of those bucket list things to do if you're an NHL fan, is to go, especially when Chicago, I covered Chicago in a couple of Stanley Cup finals. So when you're in Chicago, I was there the night that they won the Cup in 2015, heard the anthem. I actually chatted with the anthem singer on the ice after.
Jimmy Cornelison.
You bet. But my goodness, that place, when it is packed to the bone, it's an important game, and he does the anthem and they get that cheer going. That is one of those like goosebump moments in sports. If you ever have the opportunity to check it out, anyone in the chat room, you should get in and do that. Let's talk about Comrie and what he's meant to. Well, let's do that. And then, did you want to?
No, I like it. No, it's good. It's good. It's good. It's good.
I want to make sure we give enough air to the Comrie situation here, because if you've been listening to the show, I've said this before. I think Eric Comrie has come out and affected the Winnipeg Jets in a positive manner almost every single time he's been on the ice with them this season. I've also said I think that he should have been given more opportunities than he's been given this season. Ken, before we get into that debate, just let me know what you thought you saw from him on this game.
Yeah, obviously the first goal was one. First and foremost, the puck went off the skate of Jansen Harkins, changed direction, but that's one where Eric Comrie probably looks back and says he should have had made himself a little bit bigger. That one kind of squeezed through him. So in a game where the Jets came out really strong, strongly and then gave up a goal less than 3 minutes later, there was the ability for that to go off the rails in some regards. If Eric Comrie isn't a mentally tough individual after not playing very much, that could sort of, cause a disruption to the routine and the confidence could be shaken. Instead, Comrie got going and really stood up and did a great job for his team. The end-to-end goal by Barrett Hayton is an absolute highlight reel special. I don't blame the goalie on that. I blame two quick things. Didn't like the fact that, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm ragging on Neil Pionk, but Sean, to me, you played some defense. Austin Pagansky is in the middle of the three defenders. Brendan Dillon is in a chase position. Pagansky is flat-footed and skating backwards, something he does not do in a game very often. Neil Pionk has the left winger as his responsibility. I want the right defenseman to slide into the middle and make that play, knowing that it's a highly skilled player coming against a forward who's probably not very comfortable in a one-on-one situation. It's an excellent play by Hayden, and again, I don't blame Pagansky because he's not a defenseman, and most forwards who were on recall from the American Hockey League have not had to defend a one-on-one very often. And again, people will say, Barrett Hayden, he has only that's his 4th goal of the season. Well, this is a guy who's drafted in the top 10 because he has skill. Eric Comrie, didn't like the fact that he didn't make the right read, but he also, when he was picked up by the Arizona Coyotes, he was in practice with Barrett Hayden, so he knew what was coming, essentially. So he knows that's a guy with great hands. Wish he had made the save. But I want Pionk sliding over on that play, Sean. Am I wrong? If you're a defenseman, do you not have to be cognizant of that? Because the left winger was not a threat in the game. The only guy under threat on that 3-on-3 is the guy with the puck coming at full speed down the middle.
Mike Johnson entirely agreed with you. So it's
okay, perfect.
Interesting you bring that up because they talked about it, and that's exactly what he said. The weakness there is the fact that it looks like it's a one guy who goes through 4, but essentially Pionk is creating the back pressure, and everyone else is covering ice. And so the defenseman in that situation, who's the actual defenseman, is covering ice. He's not covering the player. So Mike Johnson agreed with you. I'm not so sure I like the idea of Pionk moving over to. It's an
interchange, though. Interchange. Pagansky can go to take the winger. Pionk, it's at the blue line. There's enough room to adjust.
I'm not sure if I like that idea, and let's just couch this. Let's just entirely couch this by saying Mike Johnson, who played in the NHL for a number of years, agrees with you on this. So I like your chances in this. Okay.
Mike Johnson, Ivy Leaguer and NHLer and smart man. Good. I'm glad. Thank you for letting me know that MJ agrees.
Exactly.
Good news. So, I feel better about my take now.
Here's my take. I don't necessarily know about the switch because I think there's risk in that, but this is what I will say. I think that he needed to close in closer and be on the other side of Pagansky once that move is made, right? Like he needs to be, if the only place Hayden can go is around Pagansky in that direction, then there's a direct line if he can get there from there to the net that Pionk can intercept and cut off. So I don't think that they need to be switching up because I think there can be a problem in that, but I do think that he needed to beat him to the back post at that stage. So where he was covering ice was covering no one. So maybe we're kind of saying the same thing, and maybe we're trying to get to the same point. I just don't think there needed to be a switch. I think he could have done the same thing, allowing Pagansky to try and play the play. But if Pagansky does get beat, that he's still there in that situation. That was
sure. He needs to be in a position where at worst he can trip the player before he goes in and walks in unannounced, essentially. The spacing was an issue. He was too wide, and like you said, he wasn't.
Correct. He was covering ice.
He wasn't necessarily out of position, but he wasn't covering someone who was in a more dangerous place. I'm just saying he should have identified that Pagansky is probably going to have trouble with the matchup. Anyways,
I'm not done talking about Comrie.
No, me neither. Comrie in the third period, very good, and he made a couple. You had a better look at it. Did a Jets player help him? It looked like there might have been a puck behind him on the 6-on-5, or did he just slam the door there?
I think I'm fairly certain he slammed the door. And
okay.
let's keep in mind too is
incredible save
fourth,
on Kessel before the fourth goal is saved.
exactly.
I mean, incredible save on Kessel.
Those ones you take a look at that. Like basically what happened was it's kind of the same move. It's a cross ice pass with a shot. Well, Svechnikov sets up Kyle Connor for a cross ice pass in the shot, and they score. Well, essentially not exactly the same play, but a very similar play happens right before that. And to me, it's as simple as this: that if the Coyotes score there, they win the game 4-3. They didn't score because Eric Comrie shuts the door, and they go back down the other way, and the Coyotes don't slam the door. So the difference maker for me in this game is Eric Comrie. And I'm not done with this. I just wanted to bring this up before I forgot.
Sorry.
I don't know how to pronounce this. Egan Isolin. I gave you a wake up. I'm not sure if you noticed. I'm going to give you the wake up here because how dare you try and give Ken Wiebe a wake up on the Gus bus. There has been no one in this market who has talked more about the Gus bus being ready to come up and play for the Winnipeg Jets. You have missed the mark here entirely if you have not heard Ken Wiebe talking about the Gus bus and finding a place for him in the lineup for the Winnipeg Jets. So, hey, check the receipts, do your research, and wake up to do it because that was definitely worth a wake up. Finish your point on Comrie, please.
Yeah, and my last point, and again, this has been a broadly discussed, debated topic as well. And I understand there is a segment of the population and sometimes on the analytics side that don't believe in the whole timely saves thing. Sean, that's the best example of a timely save that you can ever have. Perfect. If Comrie doesn't make the save, the Jets probably lose the game. So that is what a timely save looks like. We all understand that it counts the same no matter when it goes in, but that is the kind of inflating moment rather than a deflating moment. So that's why it's a timely save, and that's why timely saves are important, because it allowed the Jets to build the cushion instead of having to chase the game.
Yeah. Is this true, chat room? Did Housley actually tweet out that they're doing the game? If this is the case, let me just say that if this is the case that Housley is doing the game on March 1st, I'm going to once again take full credit for it. This was
as you should, yes.
So and I like Ken. Look at these hands. I didn't know they had this much power.
My only disappointing thing is I'm not going to be in the building with you.
Again. There's nothing I can't do on this podcast here. Here I'm going to turn the season around. Wake up calls all around. Anyway, I'm just going to finish up on Comrie. I think you're entirely
Please
right.
do.
We've talked so often about Connor Hellebuyck in games where he'll go out and he'll let a couple bad goals in early, and then he just shuts the door, right? And there are so many. One of the things I think that makes Connor Hellebuyck a special goaltender is I've never covered a goaltender before, in duration, that there were so many moments that he made a save that I thought, boy, oh boy, remember that save. Because if the Jets come back to win this game, it wouldn't have happened if he didn't make that save. And so people who say there's no such thing as a timely save,
get the mug up. No, get the mug up. Get the mug up. Let's go.
That's what you
wake up.
You think that, because it's like, guys, hey, you can have, if you're saying it's all about stats, you can have a 961 save percentage and still lose games, right? At that time, I'm saying right there at that time, if he allows that goal, that game is over. It's a 4-3 or 5-3 loss for the Winnipeg Jets against the last place team in the league. And we're not celebrating anything or saying the Jets are on their way to the playoffs, but this podcast right now would be a very different podcast if he doesn't make that save. Instead, he does. The Jets build off of it, head down, go the other way, score to win the game, and he keeps the puck out of the net right at the end on the 6-on-5 as well. You could not have asked for anything more from your backup goaltender on a night like this tonight, and I think someone had it up there, 6-2-1. You can't have asked for more from him on the season other than more games played, which I would have liked to have seen. You finish your point, Ken, and then ask yourself the question of whether or not we should have seen more of Eric Comrie so far this season.
And a quick one for people who are wondering about the timing of the start. So for me, this is very simple. So if you think that after losing 3 games on a road trip and 4 overall that you have to go to your starter, the problem with that theory is, Sean, you need to get Eric Comrie a game. And if Comrie plays Tuesday, because of the spacing in the schedule, it means Hellebuck goes from Saturday, or the game would be Friday night, and then doesn't play for a full week again until he goes against the Dallas Stars. So we know he's a guy that requires rhythm. So to me, this game always made sense. Now, I understand why some folks would be up in arms, but Eric Comrie, has played well enough. And here's the honest truth, Sean. If the Jets can't play Eric Comrie against the worst team in the NHL, then he shouldn't be in the NHL.
Good point.
Right? Come on. And that's not a knock on Comrie. That is bolstering Comrie's candidacy to be playing. So in terms of games played, this is a tough one. It's been very disjointed with COVID. Going into the year, if the Jets were a playoff team, we thought that Hellebuck would need to start somewhere in the neighborhood of 62 to 65 games, which would have left around 20 for Comrie. And the only way Comrie's getting to 20 after making his 9th start and 10th appearance today is if the Jets completely fall out of the race and then have to play him down the stretch to give Hellebuck some rest because he's played too much. Right now he's on pace for whatever. Let's say, does he get to 15? I think so, but it's not a guarantee depending on how things go. I would take the over on the over-under, but I don't think he gets to 20. Do you?
Yeah. No, not even close.
No,
I think it's well less than that. I get it. I understand this. I've coached sports before, a little bit of hockey. I coached high school basketball for a bit. And I do know what it's like when your season is falling behind and now you feel the pressure to be at your best at every single moment. And that is definitely going to have affected the way the Winnipeg Jets have approached their goalie tandem this year. There's been too many nights where the Jets thought we cannot risk having a game where we don't have our best foot forward with our goaltender in net. I just think that kind of sentiment needed to be parked for a little bit because of what we've seen here in the record that you're seeing from Eric Comrie. He's given every opportunity for the two. Yeah, it's coming.
Let's go. All right.
I've given every opportunity, or every opportunity he's been given to try and put an effect on this team. He's done so. And so I do think there needs to be a little bit more faith there. The tricky part, and Ken, you probably, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I think one of the tricky things about how you've managed goaltending tandems in years past is Connor Hellebuck is probably your best player and very adamantly wants to play as much hockey as possible. And I do get the sense, and Paul Maurice would give us little tiny looks behind the scenes of what that relationship was like. And it sounds like if you weren't going to play Connor Hellebuck in a game, he was going to let you know about it. My take on that, though, is that the coach has to do what's best for his team, even if players are getting angry for him. I think Comrie has needed to be given more opportunities than he's been given this year. I hope to see him getting more opportunities down the stretch here, because it remains a grind for the Winnipeg Jets down the stretch here, and they're going to need him to keep doing what he's doing. He's done an absolutely phenomenal job.
He has, and there were big questions about him going into the year. And here's the other part, Sean, that's important. I think we maybe have mentioned it briefly. Eric Comrie, the Jets need to be sure that Eric Comrie is going to be their backup next year. So if you need enough games to be confident in that happening. And I think based on the comments from Kyle Connor and Dave Lowry, the Jets are confident in that. But you need to be sure because Mikhail Burden is on a one-way deal next year and is not exempt from waivers. So that will open the door up. He'd have to clear waivers in order to be assigned to the American Hockey League. So that will be part of the decision-making process. And just quickly on the crowd, the announced crowd was 10,152 at Gila River Arena for what, Sean, very well could be the last meeting in this barn between Jets 1.0 and Jets 2.0. I'm not a great predictor of crowds. I think it was over 5,000, but it was certainly under 10,000. And when you look around, you wonder, man, I don't know. I love coming to this market. I think it's a great market. I hope they can get their arena deal sorted out. I don't know how it's going to work playing in the 5,000 seat rink. That's maybe 4,000 for NHL games. It's going to be interesting, but there are still questions about what's going to be happening long term in terms of sustainability, but we'll see what happens. And maybe they figure it out together if they can't get that built, but some interesting times ahead for the franchise for sure.
Well, for anyone who hasn't been down to go watch a game there,
Yeah, Westgate.
yeah, there's serious issues with going to a game there. I mean, the vast majority of Canadians who are down there, I'm willing to wager that almost every single person, 95% of the people in our chat room, knows someone from Manitoba who's got a place down in that area there, right? There are a ton of Canadians down there. I think the majority of them are in Mesa. Is that where what you'd say, Ken? Which
I would
is,
say a lot. I
basically
mean, two things. You're either in, kind of West Valley, which is Goodyear, or you're around Mesa, Scottsdale area for sure. I mean, my in-laws
right.
are in Maricopa, so it's an hour. It was an hour-long drive for me to get to the game today. So, I mean, imagine having the Jets playing in Portage La Prairie, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's tough.
And not just that, but in Portage La Prairie and then hopping on that
Right.
highway to get there, and it being gridlock traffic for the entire time. So my experience there,
Some improvements quickly. Sorry, some improvements. They have expanded the 202. So today's drive was quite. I mean, it's also the weekend, but the 202 makes it a lot easier in terms of comfort. But man, it can be tough in terms of traffic. There's no
Sunday
doubt about
afternoon.
that.
All
Exactly.
I know is we were down visiting friends of ours from Stonewall down there a number of years ago before I had this gig. And me, back in those days, if I could see an NHL hockey game, I was finding out a way to do it. They lived in Mesa. And I bought tickets for myself and my wife, and we were going to go to the game, and we did, and it took us 2.5 hours to get there. It was miserable. You're stuck in traffic. You get to the rink, the game's fine, but then you've got that same drive home, and you get into a little bit of a grind on the way home there. And listen, hey, when the Jets left, my friends and I used to hop in the vehicle and drive to Edmonton and Calgary to go watch games because we just needed to go watch hockey. So don't make me think for a second that I'm not willing to grind. I grew up out in the Lac-du-Bonnie Pinois area, and every Jets game I saw when I was young and growing up, it was hop in the car after school and Dad takes you in to the arena and it's a late night. I know what it's like to grind to go and do these things, but I can tell you right now, as much as I would like to be that guy who would hit up 41 games a year, if I lived in Mesa and I had to do that drive to every single one of those games 41 times a year, I wouldn't be going to all those games. It's miserable. It's a miserable setup. So them getting that arena, what you see in that arena is not necessarily reflective of the passion for hockey in that market. It's
Agreed.
reflective of how hard it is to get to that rink and how difficult it can be, or how miserable it can be to do it. So, Ken, I just wanted to ask you this question because I like to
Get your headband on. We're running out of time here. It's already 52 minutes in. Let's go.
52 minutes. Let's get the hair is a little messy, to be honest with you, Ken.
That's good.
But because you asked and you asked twice, I'll do it. Let's bring in Sean Sedbeck. Oh, thank you so much, Isaiah Bruce. I wanted to ask you this, Ken, because I think it's a good leader into. We should talk about the incident. I don't want to call it an incident, but the little bit of a joust between Jeff Hamilton and Blake Wheeler before the game yesterday. Harvey Manouk asks, "Has any player ever been upset with a question you posed? Is there anything that stands out for you that I don't want you to give up the confidentiality between you and the player, but is there anything that stands out to you?"
No, mine were more coaching exchanges for me. Haven't had a whole lot of player exchanges. Randy Carlyle, back in the days before every scrum was broadcast to the masses, we had a couple of exchanges on the road where I was pretty new in the job, and Randy thought I was being a little bit aggressive, and I think I've mentioned the one before. I asked him once after his team so they had a home and home with the Kansas City Blades. They won the first game at home handily, about 5-1, and the second game they lost, I think maybe 6-2 in on the road trip, and in Cleveland, I believe. And I asked if he thought his team got outworked. And that didn't end well particularly. So, but I mean, it was a good lesson learning. It was my first road trip at the Winnipeg Sun, covering the beat. Afterward, it was one of those things where you kind of go home, you assess, and I think Randy certainly was trying to assert his authority to a young reporter, and in some ways I can appreciate that. I didn't necessarily appreciate it at the time, but that was fine. I mean, in classic fashion, the next day on the plane, my seat assignment was beside Randy Carlisle. I was in the middle seat, and it was like nothing happened. So we discussed it, and we didn't discuss the incident ever again. But it was, and I can look back now and it was kind of funny, but at the time it was pretty intense, and it was something that, as a pretty early in the reporter process, was something that you weren't necessarily anticipating happening, and you kind of wonder, did I do something wrong there, or what happened? And I don't think that I did. I mean, I certainly found out I had a word that was something that wasn't comfortable. That was like one of the 10 commandments. If you question a team's, I know Roscoe doesn't like that I'm offended by the use of soft. So Randy was offended when I thought the work ethic wasn't there. So it was a good learning experience. And sometimes too, I mean, we've talked about this too. Sometimes as a reporter, Sean, you mentioned this too. Sometimes we ask questions where you have to stick your neck out, and you sometimes have to stick your neck out because the player or the coach is going to respond. But we also want that raw emotion when it comes to the answers. So sometimes you have to take one for the team, if you will. But also there's times where people just don't react the way you expect them to. So, it's an interesting world. We try to navigate it as best we can. But no, I mean, sorry, to your original question, I haven't had any real, player things where there have been times when a player didn't agree with what I wrote, and we talked about it, like adults, and I think found, even if the person doesn't necessarily agree, they have a better understanding of where you come from. And that's to our point on Friday night, Sean, about when we were talking about this in COVID times, in a scenario where if there's a problem and you're in the room, you go into the hallway and you talk about it. That just isn't an option right now, really. So hopefully that will be an option again in the future, I guess.
Well, Jeff Hamilton, people have been calling for him. He finally showed up. Good to see him here. We knew he had work to do. We really appreciate you coming in, Ham. You were clearly talking about, incidents in the past where, maybe there's been a little bit of conflict between reporter and player. Have you ever experienced something like that?
This week or over my career? Yeah, no, it's
let's get into that whole conversation there, because it's funny. We talked about it on the Kelly Moore played the audio in the CJRB pregame show today, and we had a conversation. We talked about it. You and I have talked about it behind. I think that it was all questions were fair. I don't see any foul on any side there. What did you think about that situation? I think I'm really interested in hearing you talk out what that was like for you, what it meant for you, why you think you got the responses that you did.
Oh, I think I think I'd start off by saying I have absolutely no problem with what Blake Wheeler said. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't answer the first question, but the reality is I have no expectation on what a player has to tell me. And the thing is, I find that when these things go on Twitter or social media, we have this immediate response where it's all of a sudden who's right and who's wrong. And then there's people who don't like the reporter or don't like Blake Wheeler, so they jump on those sides. I mean, I wasn't going to say this, but I'm going to bring this up. Tracy, in this chat, you've messaged my work, filing reports. You harass me on Twitter. You think that I have this vendetta against the Winnipeg Jets and a narrative. You go on chats on Facebook. I'm not going to give you a wake up. I'm going to give you a grow up, and it's the last thing I'm going to say about it. But moving on to what we were talking about, the reality is you jump on three sides. You either agree with one side, you agree with the other person's side, or you're somewhere in between. And the reality is I ask questions. First of all, I know Blake is a crusty guy. You know what I mean? We all know that he's a crusty guy. So you spend 25 minutes putting these questions together to make sure that you don't, you can get into a certain situation where you don't insult the guy, because very much like Mike O'Shea early in his career, they jump on one word or they jump on a sentiment, or they think you're getting, you're trying to get them. I'm just asking questions that, to be quite honest with you, I don't even deserve credit for tough questions. That wasn't a tough question. That was a softball for a captain in any sport, in any league, on any team, has an opportunity to shoulder some of the blame. I mean, we see it from Pierre-Luc Dubois. We see it from Adam Lowry. We see it from Josh Morrissey. We see it from several people. The people we don't see it from is Blake. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's not personal. I don't dislike Blake. Blake doesn't dislike me. We don't have a history. You know what I mean? It's just a question. It's seriously just a question. And not only did Blake not answer the question, he assumed I was going to write a negative story. He answers that question like a captain, and it's a positive story. It's the captain, owns up to some of the ownership. And I didn't even say specifically Blake Wheeler. I said the leadership.
You said the group.
The guy wearing the letters on, and anyone knows, whoever played sports, the ownership falls on the captain. That's why you have the captaincy. That's why you have a letter on your chest, to take these things on. And so this isn't a vendetta. This isn't an agenda. This is a softball question that Blake decided to answer with, one, the assumption that I was going to be writing a negative story, the assumption that he doesn't get any praise, which was ridiculous, because this guy had been he's the most celebrated Winnipeg Jet in the franchise's history. I mean, that's exactly what it is. And then this idea, this idea that, I don't know, man. So when he says those things, you have, my job is to not call him out, get emotional, get angry. My job is to be like, whoa, wait, you're saying that this is, you don't get the credit, whatever. And then, what followed is what followed. And then there's a little bit of an awkward situation. Scott Brown says, next question. I go on and answer the next question. And that's it. I mean, that's as simple as it is. I got nothing against Blake Wheeler. I like to think he's got nothing against me, but I'm just doing my job. And so I don't know, man. I think a lot of this stuff gets overblown. I know sports is emotional, but it's just a hockey game. You know what I mean? It's just a hockey team. I know people take it very seriously. I take it seriously. I take my job extremely seriously. So, but at the end of the day, you look at what's going around in the world, and what's a little bit of perspective? Oh, that's the third thing. I mean, sorry, Blake, that we asked you once in the last 2 weeks to come out, and you say, quote unquote, what was his exact quote? Something like him coming out was like, the
fact that I'm here tells you something about my situation or something.
He said the fact that he was in front of you speaks volumes.
Volumes, that's it. Sorry, I'm just drawing a blank. Okay, thanks for coming out. You didn't even answer the first question, and then credit to him, man, because he answered the rest of the questions. So who cares? You know what I mean? I don't know. I think it's just blown up to be a bit of a, because I mean, this is what happens, man. I mean, you saw it in Edmonton. It's a different situation in Edmonton. I didn't call him pissy, I didn't whatever. I just asked him to see and here's the other part of that question. It wasn't, what is it your fault that you're here? Part of that question was, what is the responsibility of the leadership group moving forward to get out of this situation? What can you do as a leadership group? Not Blake Wheeler. Yes, he's the captain, but what can you do as the, as the leadership group? So I don't know, man. I mean, Blake can answer any question he wants. He doesn't owe me anything. Doesn't owe me, whatever. But he owes the fans. You know what I mean? Because whether you like it or not, the fans are the reason why you make $8 million a season. It's their support. And a lot of the fans want to know. There's some people out there that don't want to know anything. They just want to go with what the players say and cheer and whatever. But then there's the real passionate ones that really want to know what the deal is. And if I'm not doing that, I'm not doing my job. So I just feel like some of these things get blown up and, we just pick sides. But as far as I'm concerned, it is what it is. What it is.
Here's what I think on that situation. And I've said this before, and I know there's a lot of times, people will. I know there's some people in the chat room who think, I don't know, someone thinks that I always get angry when the Jets win and happy when they lose. There's some other people in the chat room, I think, think that I get too negative about the situation and stuff like that. we're journalists and we're supposed to be trying to get to the truth. The truth of the matter is the Winnipeg Jets have dug themselves in a hole this year, and this season up to this point has been a bit of a disaster. So if you're watching this show to find out the truth of the matter, and I'm telling you that everything is sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns, I'm not doing my job. I'm blowing a lot of smoke out there. You touched on it, Jeff, and so people touched on it in the chat room. Blake Wheeler makes and I don't want to say this, I don't want to turn it into that, but Blake Wheeler is handsomely paid to play a game that a lot of people would love to play and wear a C on his chest and represent the team. And so when things are good, you are going to get the praise. When they're bad, I don't even think it's a case of, people throwing slings and arrows at people. When things are bad, your job, my job, Ken's job, the media's job, if we're doing it properly, is to get to the truth. And hard questions have to be asked in hard times.
Dude, if COVID-19 and the war that's going on around the world right now you can't gain perspective from that, you're lost, man. And here's the other thing. This wasn't post-game. This was the next day. This was the next day. You know what I mean? Like, this wasn't fire in the moment. And the reality is that he came out spitting because he was angry. Like, he doesn't feel like he needs to, I don't know, be responsible for those questions, or doesn't feel like he needs those answers. That's kind of my last point.
I just get to this, and I've seen it a couple times here. I'll bring this back up again here. JM Sue, who's just livid whenever we question anything to do with Wheeler on this podcast. I'm going to go back again. I try and point out what was ridiculous about that question.
I'll reiterate, it's a softball question. I don't even deserve credit for asking it. It's a softball question that was tailored to, and I even gave the Jets if you want behind the scenes, I know Blake Wheeler gets upset. I gave the Jets the opportunity to talk to him on the side, so we get a better idea of where I was coming from, a better chance that if he wanted to do that, it wouldn't be all on TV. The Jets didn't take the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. To me, to be quite honest, and we were talking about it in the show earlier, I asked Hammy about the idea of what we're seeing, definitely in play on the ice is, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Kyle Connor, players like that moving into the leadership role of this team. I mean, like, who are the Winnipeg Jets following right now on the ice? And in effort, it clearly looks to be those players to me. But I mean, if we're being honest, and we've had conversations about this before.
Don't forget Morrissey. I mean, Morrissey.
Liquor Beaver nails it. Liquor Beaver nails it here in his comment. Blake had that fire on the ice, they wouldn't be in this problem.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'd say that. I mean, let's be honest. I think we all knew that you were. We all know Blake enough to know that when you were going to be asking those questions, I think that we were going to be getting a sharp response from Blake. Right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
This is what we know. This is what we know about this situation. He likes to battle in the media, or maybe he doesn't like to, but he definitely. That's the standard for him. He likes to challenge back if he feels challenged, and at this time, I think he feels challenged. Kelly Moore was talking on the pregame show today that there's a feeling that, maybe the frustration you're seeing from Blake Wheeler is frustration what's happening in his own play, or maybe it's just the fact of the matter that these Jets aren't used to being in this position of being out of the playoffs, on the outside of the playoff situation looking in. I just wanted you to be able to come in here and kind of have the conversation about what's going on.
I appreciate it. And here's the thing, Blake is a good interview. When he's articulate and ready to go, no one speaks better than him. You know what I mean? And so it's just, I get the frustrations. A lot of this stuff is relative, right? It doesn't matter if you make $8 million or you make, whatever money. Problems are problems, and we all are really tense. We're all in this. We've all kind of learned to live in this new normal, and so tensions get high. And so in that relationship, it's fine. And moving forward, it's not going to be an issue either. I mean, the Jets got bigger fish to fry than a reporter asking, again, not exactly tough questions.
I think this is a good point by Stonewall Dave, because Stonewall Dave here is basically saying that what Wheeler is responding to right now is what he believes to, wasn't your wording of your question. What Wheeler is responding to is what he believes to be the perception of him either in the media or in the fan base or in the city right now. I think he's onto something here because, I mean, this was when Blake Wheeler was firing on all cylinders just not too long ago, and he came out and was asked, about how he's playing, and his response was like, well, what's changed, right? Well, that works, and you can say that, and you can be like, I've always been this guy, I never stopped being it. You guys are just simply wrong. You've been messing this up. When it turns from that to the Jets going on a number of games losing streak, and the production isn't there, don't tell me that someone who goes out and stands up and says what's changed and basically tells you I'm this good, I've always been this good. Don't tell me that if you've got that perception about yourself, you can't feel the lack of production that has been happening as of late while the team has been struggling. Ken, you look like you want to weigh in on this.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
You're good?
Ready to roll. Yep.
Yeah, I guess you got to get going, Ken.
Well, no, and the other thing too, Kenny?
No, go ahead. It's fine.
No, I was just gonna say the other thing too is I have this theory that, like, as much as the players like to say, you know what, all that matters is what happens in the dressing room and all the outside noise means nothing. Winnipeg is a very, very passionate market. They're a very, very, they're tuned in, they're educated, they're really into their hockey team, and you have a target on your back. You have a target on your back when you make the most money, when you're the leader of the team and all these things, and it's impossible to escape the social media stuff, because if you go check the receipts, guys, there's not a lot of negative stories, if any, of Blake Wheeler in print or whatever, but there's a lot of garbage on social media, right? There's a lot of criticism on social media, and Blake Wheeler doesn't live in a house by himself or have no group of friends, so he hears it from whether it be family members or from friends who bring it up. These guys find out from either teammate, they're looking, and I have this theory that it's whatever, but players either are playing their sport or they're Googling their name on social media. And if they do that, they're going to find it. You know what I mean? There's going to be people that love you, and there's going to be people that don't like you. And there's a lot of people out there that cross the line in what they say about these players. And at the end of the day, even though they're millionaires, they're also human beings. And so I understand that kind of stuff. It's just, to me, I had a great conversation with Paul Stastny like months ago. Kenny, you might even talk to him, but I talked to him about social media, talking about younger players, you know what I mean? And he's a big preacher of, if you're going to love yourself during the positive times as a professional athlete, you need to understand, I'm not saying you have to agree with it, but you need to understand that when things aren't going well, to kind of wade through the negative stuff. And that's just part and parcel of being a pro athlete and going through these things. And I think that's what, Blake Wheeler is, we've seen him, he's very passionate. Here's the thing you can't deny about Blake Wheeler. He wants to win, and he wants to win badly. I mean, that's a fact. And so when you combine that passion and that drive and the bad results that the Jets are getting here, it's going to create a perfect storm that when you start hearing all these things, and then a reporter asks you a question about the leadership group and questioning the leadership group, which, by the way, is not a big deal. That is our job. You don't have to be insulting, but question, you're gonna, there's potential for things like what happened yesterday to happen. And so it's just part of the deal. It's also an interesting thing too. You asked me about like the previous ones. Remember when Paul Maurice told me he could make me cry in that effing room? All those, what was that, a few years ago? Yeah. That was about accountability too. Because, and so, sometimes, athletes live in a different world. They don't like to be, told things, they got, egos, of course. We all have egos. So sometimes things get over the top. And again, you get what you kind of got yesterday.
Jeff, quick question before we go here. It was asked earlier. Hef Jamilton wants to know if you think there's any retribution on Tuesday for Scheifele as they play the Montreal Canadiens. That's the last one we got.
So I was hearing Kenny, and I don't think it was to this, but I could hear him. I think he was getting fired up earlier in the chat. I don't know if it was this, but I also heard you guys talk about this. I didn't even think of that.
I didn't either.
Do you think that's? I don't think there's anything. You know what I mean? I think Scheifele's frustration. I think Scheifele's frustration certainly lies in that play. He clearly didn't agree with the suspension that he got. It's unfortunate for him that it went all the way through the off season and then started at the beginning of this season. But I don't think Mark Scheifele is going to be looking to headhunt headhunt out there by any means. So like, yeah, retribution, absolutely not. I mean, if he sees him in the right situation for a clean hit, there might be a little more added emphasis to it. But I really don't see, any kind of retribution or issue here. I mean, he blew him up in the first play, and the guy got injured. Like, what do you need to do to add to that?
Yeah, I don't think much. We're gonna get out of here. Sorry, Jeff. Thanks for showing up.
I just wanted to show up. I knew Kenny was on a tight sked, and
Kenny's
I actually still have work to do, so I came back just to kind of get in, and I'm gonna finish.
Yeah, you bet. I'm sick as a dog. I wanted to Owen or Egan. Egan is Owen, or Egan is Owen. I got your text through Ken. I hear what you're saying. We usually don't put too much of a focus on individual Moose games, so I understand the comment that you made is in relation to that. I had taken it as you telling us to wake up and that we hadn't paid any attention to Gustafsson throughout the season, which clearly anyone who's watched this show knows is not the case. Jeff, great work down there. You too, Ken. Hope you guys have yourself a great evening. It's going to be good to see you guys. I may stay away from the rink until I've beaten this thing. I don't want to be bringing this to anyone else. But thank you so much, everyone in the chat room. Another great night. Good to be.
Oh, hey,
good to be talking about
anniversary! Happy anniversary, buddy!
Happy
anniversary!
Yeah, I actually said happy anniversary to you guys. 1 year, congratulations!
Kenny and Renny. It popped up in my Facebook yesterday. Our very first show, and I don't know if you remember, Ken, but the microphone that I used for that sounded like a pilot. So you'll like see a show in its infancy, and then years later you look back and they'll be like, man, that was so bush league. Like that's exactly what our show looked like. It was crazy bush league to start off the top.
I didn't even think you guys would last 52 minutes, let alone 52 weeks. So I mean, this is a massive victory, guys. The fact that people are still engaged and growing and wanting to come to this show. You guys have T-shirts, and and here's the thing. You guys don't like talking about yourselves, but you guys, you put an effort in here every game. You create an outlet opportunity for people to come on and share their feelings, including myself. I love this show. I love the chat. It's a really unique experience. You're almost glad that like whatever happened to 1290 kind of sparked these kind of things, created a need for this. You guys have got and ran with it. It's been hilarious. I wear my shirts. I got 3 of them with absolute pride. The engagement from the fans is just absolutely incredible. I mean, I still get a high when I listen to your guys' theme music. Your theme music. It's just an incredible situation that you guys have created here. And you know what? It's an honor to share it with you. And the other part too, guys, is you can't have 2 better guys to talk about these sports who take this job extremely serious, who are plugged in, who go, do this thing every single day. And it's just, it's an awesome situation you guys have created.
Well,
thank you, Howie. Appreciate it, buddy. Thank you.
You're a big part of it. People are excited when you show up, and they should be. You touched on shirts. One last plug before we go. If you're looking for Kenny and Renny merchandise, go to www.shopsportsnet.store. We got 3 different kinds of shirts. Again, we've brought the prices down. We've got the mugs, we've got the water bottles, headbands, and hats, hopefully to be coming soon. We think we've got things at a better price point, but boy, oh boy, it means a lot for all the people who've chipped in. Like Jeff said, he bought 2, so we had to give him a 3rd shirt, and he's been rocking it down in the desert there. We really appreciate that, as we appreciate everyone in the chat room who again brought it today. Couple wake ups handed out here and there. It was necessary. Tough love is still love, people. Tough love is still love, and that's what we got to do every once in a while. Great February here. Looking forward to March. We will see everybody. The next game is the Winnipeg Jets play the Montreal Canadiens. We'll catch up with everyone after that. Thanks for joining us.